Imagine waking up one morning to find that an entire region of your country, home to 45 million people, has been cut off from the mainland. No supplies, no reinforcements, no connection. This isn't a dystopian nightmare. This is the reality that hangs by a thread over India's most vulnerable strategic point. A mere 22 kilometers stands between national security and catastrophic isolation. Welcome to the story of the chicken's neck, the corridor that could determine India's future. Bangladesh unveiled a controversial map claiming territories that included parts of Assam, Meghalaya, and even the Siliguri Corridor itself. This wasn't just cartographic audacity, it was a direct challenge to India's territorial sovereignty. The timing couldn't have been more ominous. Pakistan's top military brass had recently visited Dhaka, holding high-level meetings with Bangladesh's interim chief advisor. The symbolism was unmistakable. Old alliances were being rekindled. New partnerships were being forged, and India's strategic nightmare was acquiring additional dimensions. But Delhi wasn't about to let its lifeline be threatened without a response. The Indian Air Force deployed 75 fighter jets to the region, a massive show of air power designed to send an unambiguous message. No one touches the chicken's neck. 3 new military garrisons have been established along the Bangladesh border. They represent force multipliers, rapid response capabilities, and a hardening of defenses along the 4,096-kilometer Indo-Bangladeshi frontier. BrahMos missiles, capable of striking targets at supersonic speeds, have been deployed. The S-400 air defense system, one of the world's most sophisticated, now guards the skies. Trishakti Corps troops have been positioned to counter any ground threat. India's defense ministry has officially classified the Siliguri Corridor as Category A critical vulnerability, acknowledging what everyone in uniform already knew. This is ground zero for any two-front conflict scenario. India's response goes beyond military muscle. A comprehensive three-dimensional doctrine is being implemented, recognizing that security in the 21st century requires more than just guns and missiles. The first dimension is infrastructure development, transforming vulnerability into strength through connectivity. The Bogibeel Bridge in Assam, inaugurated in 2018, has already reduced troop movement time by 4 critical hours. The Sikkim rail link connecting Sevok to Rangpo is under construction, promising to revolutionize logistics in the region. The East-West Industrial Corridor is being developed across North Bengal, converting a strategic liability into an economic asset. Cross-border railway connections are being negotiated. Access to Chittagong port in Bangladesh is being explored. The vision is clear: make the region so economically vibrant, so integrated, so indispensable that threatening it becomes unthinkable. The second dimension is deterrence through defense modernization. The Indian Air Force operates from Bagdogra and Hashimara, with the latter barely 15 kilometers from the corridor. New radar stations are sprouting across Hashimara, Alipurduar, and Balurghat. Helipads are being constructed for rapid helicopter deployment. Plans are underway to station Rafale fighter jets and indigenous Tejas squadrons at Bagdogra, creating an umbrella of air superiority that would make any aggressor think twice. The third dimension is diplomacy, perhaps the most crucial of all. Military strength can deter enemies, but only diplomatic wisdom can create lasting peace. In India's neighborhood-first policy recognizes this fundamental truth. Proactive engagement with Bangladesh isn't optional. It's existential. Economic incentives, cultural exchanges, people-to-people connections, joint military training exercises. All these tools of soft power are being deployed to keep Dhaka close without making it feel cornered. The goal isn't domination, but partnership, not coercion, but cooperation. But let's be brutally honest about the current situation. Living with the chicken's neck in its present state is like having one's oxygen supply running through a neighbor's house. As long as the neighbor remains friendly, the oxygen flows. But the moment relations sour, the vulnerability becomes a death sentence. This isn't fear-mongering, this is cold strategic reality. China's growing influence in Nepal and Bangladesh, Pakistan's renewed engagement with Dhaka, the territorial claims emerging from across borders, these aren't coincidences. They're part of a calculated strategy to exploit India's geographical Achilles heel. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about 45 million citizens whose connection to India hangs by a geographic thread. We're talking about states rich in natural resources, bursting with cultural diversity, home to some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. We're talking about the tribal communities, the tea gardens, the oil fields, the traditions that make India the incredible mosaic it is. Lose the chicken's neck. And India doesn't just lose territory. It loses a part of its soul. The Northeast isn't just a region on a map. It's an integral part of the nation's identity, a testament to India's diversity and unity. But the threat matrix grows more complex. Pakistan's ISI has been intensifying its presence in Bangladesh, and the recent visit of General Syed Shamshad Mirza, chairman of Pakistan's Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, to meet with Muhammad Yunus in his Jamuna residence signals more than diplomatic courtesy. Intelligence reports suggest further Rawalpindi Dhaka engagements are planned, each one tightening the noose around India's strategic interests. This isn't coincidence, it's coordination. China's Chumbi Valley buildup represents one prong of a potential pincer movement. The Chinese upgraded Lalmonirhat Air Base in Bangladesh represents the other. Together, they create a scenario defense planners call the two-front nightmare. Simultaneous pressure from opposite directions, designed to split India's focus and resources. The Doklam Plateau confrontation wasn't an isolated incident. It was a rehearsal, a test of India's resolve and response time. Meanwhile, China's infrastructure investments across the region follow a familiar pattern. What begins as economic development, airports, roads, ports, gradually morphs into strategic assets. Radar systems get installed. Surveillance capabilities expand. What was sold as connectivity becomes encirclement. The Vibrant Villages program along India's northern borders represents Delhi's countermove, populating and developing frontier regions to create human shields of prosperity against Chinese expansion. A nation spanning over 3 million square kilometers, commanding one of the world's most powerful militaries, yet its connection to an entire region depends on a strip of land narrower than the distance between two metro stations. This is the Siliguri Corridor, nestled in northern West Bengal, where the map reveals a geographical choke point that defense strategists call a nightmare. On one side lies Nepal, on another Bhutan. Below stretches Bangladesh, and looming from the north, the shadow of China creeps closer with each passing year. Between these four nations runs a slender passage, at its narrowest point, barely 22 kilometers wide, through which flows the lifeblood of India's entire northeastern frontier. 7 states depend entirely on this fragile connection. Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Tripura, and Mizoram, the 7 sisters, remain tethered to mainland India through this precarious link. Their 45 million residents, their economies, their security, all rely on a corridor so narrow that British colonial officers once mockingly called it the chicken's neck. What exactly travels through this tiny passage that makes it so critical? National Highway 27 carries logistics, trade, and daily commerce. Major railway arteries pump people and freight through this bottleneck. Oil pipelines transport the precious resources from the Northeast's rich petroleum reserves, feeding the refineries sprouting across Assam. Fiber optic cables carry digital connectivity, the lifeblood of the modern economy. And most crucially, defense supply routes enable troop movements and military logistics to India's forward bases in Sikkim and the Northeast. Sever this corridor, and the consequences become unthinkable. The region would be isolated instantly. Military logistics would collapse. Economic lifelines would be strangled. The strategic ramifications would cascade across South Asia. This vulnerability didn't emerge overnight. The seeds were sown during the partition of 1947, when the map was redrawn in blood and chaos. East Bengal transformed into East Pakistan, slicing through India's territorial integrity and creating this unnatural bottleneck. Even after the liberation of Bangladesh in 1971, when India's military prowess reshaped the region's destiny, the opportunity for a land exchange to widen this critical corridor was never pursued. Why? Perhaps because the magnitude of the threat wasn't fully understood then. Perhaps because diplomatic considerations took precedence over geographic realities. Whatever the reason, the chicken's neck remained, a strategic time bomb ticking at the heart of India's territorial integrity. Fast forward to today, and the storm clouds have never looked darker. China has been systematically building its presence in the Chumbi Valley, a dagger pointed directly at India's vulnerable throat. Just 80 kilometers north of the Siliguri Corridor, Beijing has been fortifying positions, conducting military buildups, and testing India's resolve through repeated incursions. The tensions exploded into global headlines during the Doklam standoff of 2017. For 73 days, Indian and Chinese soldiers stood eyeball to eyeball on the Doklam Plateau, barely 130 kilometers north of Siliguri. The world watched nervously as two nuclear-armed giants faced off in terrain so treacherous that nature itself seemed to be holding its breath. But China's strategy extends beyond military posturing. Their checkbook diplomacy has been working overtime in the region. Bangladesh's Lalmonirhat Air Base, located just 100 kilometers from Siliguri, is being upgraded with Chinese-built radar systems and fighter hangars. Beijing claims its economic development. Delhi sees it as strategic encirclement. India isn't the first nation to face such geographical vulnerability. The United States treats the Panama Canal as its economic jugular vein, monitoring it with satellites and cyber surveillance, even decades after ceding formal control. The message is clear. Some strategic assets are too important to leave to chance. Israel faces a similar challenge with a 15-kilometer narrow stretch along its coast. Despite being even narrower than India's corridor, Tel Aviv has transformed it into a fortress bristling with sensors, underground logistics networks, and rapid response forces capable of mobilizing in minutes. Vulnerability, when recognized and addressed, can be converted into strength. The ultimate solution lies in transforming the entire paradigm. Why should the Siliguri Corridor remain merely a vulnerable passage? Why can't it become an economic powerhouse, a development engine that pulls the entire region into prosperity? The vision is taking shape. High-speed rail networks will slash travel times. Special economic zones focusing on manufacturing, trade, and exports will create millions of jobs. The PM Gati Shakti Yojana Master Plan promises integrated connectivity that will knit the nation together more tightly than ever before. Transnational universities will foster academic excellence and regional cooperation. When the Siliguri Corridor becomes an economic metropolis, when it becomes so prosperous that threatening it means threatening the economic interests of multiple nations, when development makes it indispensable rather than vulnerable, that's when true security will be achieved. But here's the thing about vulnerabilities. They only remain weaknesses if we choose to ignore them. India has stared down greater threats and emerged stronger. From the heights of Kargil to the deserts of Rajasthan, from the jungles of Manipur to the icy peaks of Siachen, Indian soldiers have defended every inch of the sacred soil with blood and sacrifice. The chicken's neck won't be India's breaking point. It will be the catalyst that drives unprecedented development in the Northeast. It will be the reason infrastructure gets built, economies get strengthened, and communities get connected. It will be the strategic challenge that forces India to think creatively, act boldly, and invest wisely in its future. The deployment of 75 fighter jets isn't just about military might, it's a declaration, a promise to the people of the Northeast that they're not forgotten, not abandoned, not expendable. It's a message to those who eye India's territory with covetous ambitions. Test India's resolve at your own peril. Every nation faces its defining geographical challenges. For some, it's water scarcity. For others, it's lack of coastline. For India, it's this 22-kilometer corridor. But challenges, when faced with courage and wisdom, become opportunities for greatness. The question isn't whether India can secure the chicken's neck. The question is, when future generations look back at this moment in history, will they remember it as the time India transformed its greatest vulnerability into its most powerful symbol of unity, development, and unshakable national will? The answer is being written right now, in the skies above Siliguri, in the corridors of power in Delhi, in the hearts of 45 million Indians who refuse to be anyone's pawn in geopolitical games. And that answer will be as clear as it is defiant. This land is India's, this corridor is sacred, and not a single inch will ever be surrendered without the fight of the century. Because some things are worth defending, some connections are worth protecting, and some battles are worth fighting, not just with weapons, but with the collective will of a billion people who understand that an attack on any part of India is an attack on all of India. The chicken's neck will not be India's weakness. It will be its testament to strategic foresight, its monument to national unity, and its promise to every citizen that geography might challenge India, but it will never defeat it.